Okay, once again, good morning and welcome to class. Today's topic is about argument and argument analysis. So, we're going to discuss argument and see how we can analyze and evaluate an argument by laying down a framework, some significant indicators, or you can call them factors or criteria for analysis that I would like you to keep at the back of your mind every time you read something critically, to draw upon them so that you can be an informed reader, and the act of reading can be informed. You know what you're doing, you know what you're looking for. So the activity will be, as I said, informed by theoretical insights. The act of reading. Reading is an activity, reading is a process, and so are the other skills or communicative activities, whether the productive ones, speaking and writing, or the receptive ones, listening and reading. They're all activities. Critical reading, critical thinking. So we're going to look at the term critical also. Critical reading, critical thinking. But to contextualize this, to put this discussion into a larger context, let me remind you of the 3 levels of reading we mentioned a number of times throughout our course. Literal level, the inferential level, and the critical or evaluative level. These are ways of thinking about a text, ways of reading a text and understanding a text and attempting to extract meaning or make meaning as you interact with the text, as you transact with the text. Transaction between you and the text, the author and the reader. Literal comprehension, we said, is the most basic type of comprehension. Things should be easy at this level, and all questions should be answered correctly, because you're being asked about things that are found at the literal level. How many people are in the play? What's the main character in the story? Where was the this or that born? So literal questions. How many chairs are in the classroom? Literal comprehension. Surface level. Basic. Then, after you go initially through this level of reading, these meanings, you try to go into a higher order level of thinking. Let me use a term used here quite a lot: HOTS. Higher order. What is it?
Thinking skills.
Sorry?
Thinking skills.
Thinking skills. Yeah, the HOTS. So this is the inferential comprehension, where you try to extract the unspoken, try to get the meanings that are expressed implicitly, what remains unspoken. So you draw conclusions and you make inferences. You fill in missing gaps of information by combining your imagination, your mind, and the text. We talked about this in a class about drawing conclusions and making inferences. Today, we're going to look at the most complex level of thinking about the text, and that is the critical level, critical reading. This is where you go beyond the text, in an attempt to, as I said, construct meaning or extract meaning. So this is the larger context of today's class. It's a way of thinking about the reading. The third way or level, and this is the most sophisticated or the most complex level of thinking about a text. As I said before I started recording the class, and as we mentioned in the previous class last week, when we talked about the 4 elements to remember when writing and to detect or determine when reading: purpose, point of view, tone, and audience. Whenever you read, you should try to determine the purpose, because writers write for a purpose, a reason. So as a reader, part of your comprehension is trying to figure out the reason why the text was written. The point of view, whether the author has a positive and negative point of view of the subject. The audience being addressed, who is meant by this text or that, and the tone used. An angry tone, a sad tone, an apologetic tone, a critical tone, a serious tone, a humorous tone. So this is part of your comprehension. So in that class last week, when we talked about the different purposes of writing, one central purpose we discussed for writing is persuasive writing, when the aim or the purpose is not merely to inform, but rather to transform reality. Can you please keep your cameras on for better attentiveness? Where are we? So one of the purposes we discussed at length was language being used as a means to influence people's perception and so change their attitudes, beliefs, ideologies, behaviors. Language used to persuade. And we stated in that class that it is rare for language in everyday life to be used purely or merely as a pure instrument of, communication or the transmission of information from one mind to another, the telementation or transmission of ideas. Rarely is language being used like that. There is usually an agenda behind the dissemination of information, the propagation of information, the communication of information. There is usually an ulterior motive, an agenda. And so, coming now, linking that discussion to this class, as much as there is information in the world, there is disinformation. As much as there is honesty in the world, there is dishonesty, if not more. There are honest people, but there are many dishonest people who try to con others, deceive others, manipulate others, swindle others, using shenanigans, using skullduggery, using disinformation, misinformation. Central to this manipulation is language. It comes at the heart. Even we saw in the previous class that colonialism, colonial powers enacted and sustained the domination and oppression and occupation of the three largest continents in the world, Asia, Africa, and Latin America, using discourse, language, ideological state apparatuses, ISAs, shaping, controlling, influencing people's perception using linguistic means, discursive means. And so, how to know what's really real in a world increasingly full of fake? How to know what's really real in a world full of fake? You might be innocent, but the world is full of evil, full of wickedness, full of dishonesty. That's a fact. Full of criminals. They might be in, wearing suits and looking great, but they are evil. And crucial, as I said, central to the exercise of their domination, of their power, of their cheating is language. Is language. Is language. So, we're going today to discuss argument and see some factors that we need to consider when evaluating, when trying to understand an argument, the value of an argument, whether an argument is sound or seems sound or sounds sound, whether an argument is really sound and valuable or seems sound, sounds sound, looks sound, but upon critical investigation, upon critical reading, it collapses, because the premises used for the point, for the argument, are weak, are bluffing you. They're not strong. They're built on a house of cards, not a solid foundation. How to sort out the wheat from the chaff? How to distinguish information from disinformation? How to distinguish what is really real from what is fake? Fake. Of course, I don't claim that this class will make you but it will make you aware And awareness is the first step to liberation. Awareness, consciousness, being conscious is the first step to enlightenment and liberation. If you want to liberate a people, a society, a human being, first of all, you need to make them conscious of their reality, of the fact that there's an alternative to their way of life. Consciousness is the first step to liberation. Awareness, zeitgeist. So I don't claim that this class will make you critical discourse analysts, critical readers and thinkers, but it is the beginning. It will pave to you the way to becoming a critical reader as you practice this. So we're going just to provide you with some theoretical tools that will make you aware. And the more you practice, the more you apply these tools in your reading, apply them to what you read and hear, the more critical you will become, ensuring that you will not be conned or cheated, accepting something that might not be as good as it is claimed to be. The examples we give you here in the textbook are simple ones, because this is a simple course. But if this was a different course, like about language and power or critical discourse analysis, we would have given you examples of language that upon critical discourse analysis, you will be astonished of the power of language and its, the ability of language to influence perceptions and, change reality, enslave people or liberate people. So due to the nature of the course, I cannot, go into such, detailed, deeper picture. But there is a lot of, as I said, a lot of chicanery, a lot of dishonesty carried out through linguistic means. So you don't want to be gullible. You don't want to be, naive. That's a simpler word than gullible. I've written the word in the chat column. Okay, this is an interesting introduction. Since I am recording the class, you can refer to it later on. Critical reading and critical thinking. What is critical thinking? Critical thinking is rational thinking. It is the ability to evaluate an idea logically and rationally in order to make good judgment using logical reasons and evidences. Rational thinking, evaluate, make good judgments, logical reasons and evidence. Critical thinking is the ability to think rationally, not emotionally, the ability to evaluate an argument, others' ideas, evaluate ideas and see if they are built on a strong foundation the premises, the reasons, the supporting points. And so you can make informed judgments and make solutions that are based on rational thinking. What is a critical reading? Critical reading is the process. Notice it's a process. You move from A to Z. Reading is a process. Critical reading is the process of reading that goes beyond just understanding or accepting a text. That's the literal level. Literal comprehension, and to some extent, inferential comprehension. But the critical comprehension, understanding a text at the literal and inferential level is not enough. You need to dig deeper. You don't simply accept the text as it is without carefully considering and evaluating the reading, identifying the reading's strengths and implications, identifying the reading's weaknesses and the flaws, any problems in reasoning, errors in reasoning, fallacies, propaganda techniques, facts, opinions, assumptions. And so you need to scrutinize. We'll help you, provide you with some tools today under what I call argument analysis framework. Let's begin by watching this video about critical thinking and reading. Please be with me, be attentive. The class will finish in 1 hour and a half, more or less. So be attentive, and then you can go and even sleep for some time. But try to digest what I am saying, and most importantly, begin applying what I'm sharing with you from now onwards. This may help you this may save you the trouble later on, being cheated or conned or deceived.
As you probably already know, effective readers read critically. As a critical thinker, you evaluate the information or evidence the writer presents. Huh? What does that all mean? Don't you just have to understand what you read? What do you have to do to read critically? Have I been reading critically? Stick around and let's talk about thinking, writing, and reading critically. Hi, and welcome to Snap Language. I'm Mar Franco. I can imagine a caveman thousands and thousands of years ago admiring a cave painting. Pretty. And another caveman saying, oh, it's so derivative. At that moment, critical thinking was born, and humanity has never been the same. So what is critical thinking? Dictionary.com defines it as disciplined thinking that is clear, rational, open-minded, and informed by evidence. What? Daniel Willingham states that critical thinking involves 3 types of thinking: reasoning, making judgments, and problem solving. Richard Paul and Linda Elder define critical thinking as the art of analyzing and evaluating thinking with a view of improving it. Critical thinkers raise questions and problems, gather and assess relevant information, come up with well-reasoned conclusions and solutions, keep an open mind and challenge preconceived ideas, and are self-directed, self-disciplined, self-monitored, and self-corrective. Okay, all that sounds good. So critical thinking has to do with rational thinking, evaluating information. For me, critical thinking has to do with not simply accepting someone else's ideas, not even your own. First, you evaluate them. You ask questions. If an idea makes sense, great. Otherwise, you reject it. And you can even explain why you rejected it. Then you replace that idea with even better ideas. When you write, for example, you want to have a good understanding of the topic you're writing about. Depending on the purpose of the writing, you make sure you have accurate, relevant information and you present it in a way that makes sense to the reader. And how does that apply to reading? Well, when we read, we almost intuitively know when something does or does not hold water. We say, "This is a good article," or, "I don't buy it." But intuition can only take us so far. We need to follow certain steps to evaluate information systematically. As you evaluate someone else's thinking, even your own thinking, you want to examine the information carefully and ask questions. What evidence do they use to support their ideas? What information do they perhaps leave out so they wouldn't contradict their own position? Are the conclusions based on facts or opinions? Are the facts relevant and accurate? Are the opinions justifiable? Are there logical flaws or fallacies? That's a lot of complex thinking. You can think of it as critical thinking is hard. Or you can think of it as, wow, isn't it amazing how human beings are capable of such complex thoughts? It takes practice, so if it seems daunting, do not freak out. The more you apply these aspects of critical thinking while you think, read, and write, the easier it gets until it becomes second nature to you. In the next few videos, we'll be talking about reading skills, well, more like thinking skills that you can apply to reading so you can read more deeply. We'll look at things like distinguishing fact and opinion, analyzing the argument, detecting the author's biases, detecting logical fallacies, and so forth. So stay tuned for more and subscribe to Snap Language so you don't miss any new videos. And until the next time, thanks for stopping by and watching this video.
Critical reading. Critical reading is a big part of understanding argument. Although some of the material you read will be very persuasive, do not fall under the spell of the printed word as authority. Very few of your instructors think of the texts they assign as the last word on the subject. So, the fact that something is in print does not mean that it is a fact and that it should be taken, as such. No. Don't fall under the spell of this. Take it with a pinch of salt, especially nowadays, as I said, in the era of information explosion, and we're as much as there is information, there is disinformation. So you need to take things carefully with a pinch of salt. The word argument, we've already come across argument in chapter 6, I think. That is session 10, week 10, when we talked about the types of reasoning. So we introduced the term argument then. Argument, if you recall, argument is the point the author is making. This point, the message, the main idea, the conclusion, this point, this conclusion is supported by premises, reasons, supporting details. And so an argument, again if you recall, is made up of statements. Statements are of two types. a conclusion, that's the point, the message, and premises. Statements in the sense that the sentences are declarative sentences. Declarative sentences. We talked about this previously. So two types of statements, premises. These are the reasons an author cites or develops to prove, to help him or her arrive at the conclusion he or she is making. And so, the argument is not bickering or brawling. It's a rational discussion. Argument in academic writing and the critical thinking is the author's point. That's the main idea, the claim, thesis. It's the author's attempt to support a conclusion, the author's beliefs or views on an issue. It is a set of ideas that support a point. That's the conclusion. So you may want to briefly, in a word, to think of the argument as a set of ideas, that support a conclusion. A set of ideas. What's an argument? A set of ideas that support a conclusion. The conclusion is the point the author wants us to believe in or buy into. Remember that the author of every text has an agenda. Something he or she wants you to believe in or buy into. To believe in or buy into. This is okay. Well, not buy into. This is okay. Everything is written from someone's perspective, but it's a good thing to be aware of. Take notes when you read, either in the margins of your source, if you are using a photocopy or your own book, or on a separate sheet of paper. Put away that highlighter. This is useful when you want to memorize something, but it is not useful for critical thinking and critical reading. You need to converse with the text in the marginalia. You may even contact the author and talk to him. And so, part of your goal as a critical reader should be to put the author's ideas in your own words. Then you can stop thinking of these ideas as facts and start thinking of them as arguments. Facts, arguments. Facts versus arguments. When you think of something as an argument, it means that it is open to discussion. Let's see. But if you think of it as a fact, then you've already closed your mind. You've accepted it as a fact, then you're not going to exercise your logos, your powers of reason. And so, what is written is an argument. Look at it. An argument, of course, will use a combination of facts, opinions, information, maybe disinformation, in an attempt to persuade the reader. So you need to sort this out. Will help you. So what is important here now to remember is that remember what is written as an argument, not a fact. An argument means that You may agree or disagree. It is open to questioning, discussion. Okay? This is a crucial point. When you read, ask yourself questions. So the first step to become a critical reader, a critical thinker, is to question, to problematize everything. Rather than accepting things, taking them for granted, as a true, as factual, as sacred, as holy, problematize them. Ask questions. What is the author trying to prove? And what is the author assuming I will agree with? Do you agree with the author? Does the author adequately defend his or her argument? Adequately defend his or her argument? Adequately, relevant support, enough support, sufficient in terms of quantity and quality? What kind of proof does he or she use? What kind of proof? Objective evidence, research findings, legal documents, historical data, expert opinion, expert testimony, or merely assumptions and opinions, personal experiences, personal feelings, personal assumptions? What sort of evidence? Is there something he, she leaves out that you would put in? The unspoken, inferential comprehension? Is there anything that the author left out? What is it and why? Would it affect the argument if he or she included it? Does putting it in hurt the argument? And a lot more questions. We're going to see some in another video we're going to watch in a minute. So as you get used to reading critically, you will start to see that the sometimes hidden agendas of other writers. The hidden agendas. You know, how they program you to accept something. And you can use this skill to improve your own ability to craft effective arguments. Critical reading includes or depends on the following three abilities: being able to separate fact from opinion, being able to detect propaganda. There are many propaganda techniques. Being able to recognize fallacies. These are errors in reasoning. Errors in reasoning. Let's watch two videos related to these concepts, and then we get back.
Writing an argument is difficult enough, but how do you teach students how to analyze someone else's argument and determine its strengths and weaknesses? Well, first, let's acknowledge one of the hardest parts of this task for students, and that is to stay focused on the writing purpose. They are not to be including their own personal opinions on the topic or the issue, but rather they are to be evaluating someone else's. Such an analysis would typically revolve around 4 factors, and this is what students should put in their written product. First, they should summarize the author's reasons provided in his argument. In the standards, this is referred to as identify, explain, or trace the author's reasons. So, while simply recapping the author's reasons, determine if they're logical. Do they make sense? Second, students should assess the evidence that the author provided. This thing should be packed with proof. Look at the quantity of evidence provided. Is there a lot of data? Is there sufficient support as the standards read? Or is it a little skimpy? Besides the quantity of evidence, we also want students to look at the quality of that evidence. Is it all numbers, statistics, dates, percentages, ratios? Or are there also some expert quotes and some anecdotal evidence? You see, a stronger argument has a good mixture of different types of data. And here's one more thing when assessing the evidence. We have to look at how current is it. Is the author citing data from 50 years ago? That may not be a big deal if the piece is about something regarding World War II. But what if the topic is current trends in technology? That's going to be something to take note of. So, students should summarize the author's reasons, assess the evidence, and third, they should identify the perspectives presented. You see, persuasive writing is very lopsided. It's very one-sided. All of the sentences provided are about the one side I'm fighting for. But a strong argument is going to acknowledge the opposition. It's going to give some space, literally some sentences, to other viewpoints. So, does this piece represent multiple perspectives? And when the author is referencing other viewpoints, what's his overall tone and language? Is he fair-minded and respectful? Or is he biased, stereotypical, a little sarcastic, even derogatory? A final consideration in such an analysis argument would be to look outside the piece. Take note of any information provided about the author himself. What are his qualifications, his experiences? What's his expertise? You see, any information about the author could make an argument even more credible.
Right, before we elaborate on what this YouTuber has mentioned, would like you to watch this other YouTube video, educational video, about three things to try to remember and watch for when reading critically.
Skilled readers are those who can recognize an author's point and the support for that point. Critical readers are those who can evaluate an author's support for a point and determine whether that support is solid or not. This lesson will extend your ability to read critically in three ways: separating fact from opinion, detecting propaganda, and recognizing errors in reasoning. First, we'll look at the difference between fact and opinion. A fact is information that can be proved true through objective evidence. Facts can be checked for accuracy and thus proved true. Here is an example of a fact. At least 4 out of 5 adults will experience lower back pain at some point in their lives. Extensive medical research confirms that this statement is true. An opinion is a belief, judgment, or conclusion that cannot be objectively proved true. Here is an example of an opinion. The best treatment for lower back pain is physical therapy. There is no consensus in the scientific community that this is true. Medication, exercise, surgery, and acupuncture are among the treatments recommended by experts. It is important to remember that much of what we read and hear is a mixture of fact and opinion. Now we'll look at a second way to extend your ability to read critically, by detecting propaganda. When advertisers, salespeople, and politicians say, "Buy our product" or "Vote for me," they often lack adequate factual support for their points. Instead, they appeal to our emotions by using propaganda techniques. Part of being a critical reader is having the ability to recognize these propaganda techniques for the emotional fluff that they are. The most common type of propaganda technique is transfer, in which products or candidates try to associate themselves with something that people admire or love. This picture is an example of transfer. Here, a political candidate wearing an American flag and saying "Vote for me" is accompanied by a beauty queen wrapped in a USA banner. The candidate is hoping that the positive feelings we have toward the sexy-looking beauty queen and the patriotism stirred in us by the American flag and the USA banner will be transferred to him and get us to vote for him. Chapter 9 in the textbook will tell you more about transfer, as well as 5 other propaganda techniques: bandwagon, testimonial, plain folks, name-calling, and glittering generalities. There are other propaganda techniques as well, but these 6 are among the most common. Now we will look at some common errors in reasoning, also known as fallacies, that take the place of the real support needed in an argument. A valid point is based on a rock-like foundation of solid support. A fallacious point is based on a house of cards that offers no real support at all. One common fallacy is called circular reasoning. In an argument using circular reasoning, the supporting reason is really the same as the conclusion. Such evidence is illogical. Here is a simple and obvious example of such reasoning. Alan Gordon is a great manager because he is so wonderful at managing. The supporting reason, he is so wonderful at managing, is really the same as the conclusion. Alan Gordon is a great manager. We still do not know why he is a great manager. No real reasons have been given. The statement has merely repeated itself. Circular reasoning is a fallacy that ignores the issue. Another common fallacy is called false cause. This is a fallacy that oversimplifies the issue. The fallacy known as false cause occurs when one assumes that because event B follows event A, event B was caused by event A. Look at this example. My favorite TV show was moved to a different time slot this season. No wonder it's now getting canceled. But there could be reasons other than the move to a new time slot for the programs getting canceled. Perhaps the show has less competent writers, or perhaps a favorite actor has left the show. In any case, it's dangerous to assume that just because A came before B, A caused B. Chapter 9 in the textbook will tell you more about these 2 fallacies. It will also explain 2 more common fallacies that ignore the issue: personal attack and straw man, and 2 more common fallacies that oversimplify the issue: false comparison and either or. In all of these fallacies, a point is argued, but no true support is offered for that point. To summarize, in this lesson you learned that critical readers evaluate an author's support for a point and determine whether that support is solid or not. Critical reading includes the following 3 abilities: separating fact from opinion. A fact is information that can be proved true through objective evidence. An opinion is a belief, judgment, or conclusion that cannot be proved objectively true. Detecting propaganda. Advertisers, salespeople, and politicians often try to promote their points by appealing to our emotions rather than our powers of reason. To do so, they practice 6 common propaganda techniques: bandwagon, testimonial, transfer, plain folks, name-calling, and glittering generalities. Recognizing errors in reasoning. Politicians and others are at times guilty of errors in reasoning, fallacies, that take the place of the real support needed in an argument. Such fallacies include circular reasoning, personal attack, straw man, false cause, false comparison, and either or.
we're going to see some of these fallacies when we talk about validity as one of the indicators of an argument. Okay, now we want to try to be more practical. So what's next? What to look for when analyzing and evaluating an argument. So now it's time to know the specifics, the things to look for as you try to understand and evaluate the soundness of an argument, the value or worth of an argument. An argument we've described as a set of ideas supported by premises, supported by reasons. These are the things that you should look for when you want to start evaluating the argument. Understand and evaluate the argument. You are reading an essay, an article, a paragraph. First of all, you need to look for the issue. You need to identify the issue. That's the topic, basically, put forward by an author in a particular text or context. What's the issue? Education, abortion, Malaysia, sports, English language teachers, ESL students. What's the topic? What's the issue being discussed? Next, you need also to recognize whether the issue is descriptive or prescriptive. And so an issue can be descriptive, that is describing the accuracy or inaccuracy of a claim. An article written about a descriptive issue. Descriptive here means that the writer is trying to talk about how accurate or inaccurate a certain claim is. The prescriptive issues, on the other hand, deal with issues that involve opposing views, right or wrong, moral issues that involve usually two sides. For example, abortion. Whether abortion should be legalized or criminalized, for example. This is a prescriptive issue. You will find people who are pro-abortion, and you will find people who are against abortion, pro-abortion or pro-choice. So a prescriptive issue then involves different or differing opinions. It's a moral, it raises questions on moral or aesthetic claims. Capital punishment. Should we stop capital punishment, death sentence, or continue death sentence? So these are prescriptive issues. So first of all, then you need to identify the issue and decide if it's descriptive or prescriptive. Next, you need to know the point, the author's position, the author's stance about this issue. That's the argument. The author's point. What's the point the author is making? Is he with or against abortion? So you need to know the author's perspective. Having done that, you move on to the premises or reasons he or she is using to support the argument. So you move systematically, methodically, like that. What's the issue? Of course, do not forget earlier classes about reading purposefully, skimming the text quickly for main ideas, have a feeling, previewing, skimming. Do not forget these classes. But remember that, that you are now at the third level of reading. You are reading critically now. So you've already moved beyond the literal comprehension stage and the inferential comprehension stage. So you've already skimmed the text. You've already previewed the text, have some literal comprehension of it. So you are now reading critically. The issue, descriptive, prescriptive. What's the point the author is making about the issue, the stance, the position of the author. Then, what are the reasons? We've said an argument is a set of ideas. A set of ideas that an author uses to support a claim, a conclusion. So what are these main ideas? What are the points the author is using to build up his or her argument? So you summarize them or you pick them up. It will be 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on how complex the issue is and how long the article is. But we can clearly pick them out and write them on a piece of paper. The issue, the main point the author is making, and then the premises the author is using to build up his argument. Having done that, now we move on to the assessment, stage, where when we begin to assess the evidence, look at these, supporting points, the premises, the reasons, and begin breaking them down to assess their, their value. There are now, once you reach to this stage, there are 5 things or 5 factors, 5 indicators to look for or to evaluate the evidence, to assess the evidence in light of or against which. These are relevance, objectivity, validity, credibility, and completeness. How many? 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The first 3, this is for you to know the issue, the author's position, and the reasons. The other 5 factors, these are the things that will help you evaluate the evidence. So you evaluate the evidence in light of objectivity. We're going to see what we mean by that in a minute. Validity, or before that, relevance, objectivity, validity, reliability, credibility, and completeness. How many factors?
5.
5. The earlier 3, the issue, the author's position, the point of the argument, and the reasons, these are the beginning. And so now we're going to summarize much of what we have said so far before we move on to to a description of these 5 factors. To explain what we mean by these 5 factors. So look now at the summary of what we have been saying. Critical readers, critical thinkers, does the evidence sound good or is it good? Is it good or only sounds good? Argumentation is an important part of much of what we read. argumentation is an important part of much of what we read. An author arguing a point. And the critical reading is a big part of understanding and assessing argument. Critical reading. What's critical reading? Understanding and assessing argument, not accepting it as a fact. And so when analyzing an author's argument, a critical reader, a critical thinker needs to first identify the issue, next recognize the point the author is making. That's the author position. Author's position. Summarize the premises he or she is giving. Maybe we can use a different color. Where is the, okay. What color should I choose? What color? Is this color visible? Can you see?
Yes, doctor.
Okay. Because I would like to break down the critical reading like into two separate stages. So the first, you identify the issue, recognize the point, identify the point the author is making, summarize the premises, whether they are 2, 3, 4, 5, there will be points. These are the supporting, these are the major supporting sentences. Recall the class? Major and minor supporting details. These are the major details. There will be a sentence, a topic sentence in each paragraph. So pick them out. You've got to know, you've got to draw upon that class. The topic, the main idea, state the main idea, imply main idea, the position of the main idea can be at the beginning, at the end. And now you move on to the, really the analysis stage or phase where you begin to assess the evidence. Okay. Assess the evidence he or she is providing. How do you do that? By deciding the following. How do you assess the evidence? By deciding the following. Decide if the author's support is relevant. So the first one is relevant. Decide if the author's support is relevant. Next, decide if the author's support is adequate, the quantity. Next, decide if the author's support is objective. We're going to discuss these in a short while. Next, decide if the author's support is valid. Decide if the author's support is credible. And decide if the author's support is complete. Complete. How many? So completeness, credibility, validity, objectivity, relevance and adequate are related. So maybe we can actually combine them here because they are, I want you to think of 5 factors to make it easier for you to remember the framework. Are you following, class?
Yes. Yes, doctor.
I want to make it easier for you because here we've talked about how many? 5 we said. Relevance, Maybe we can say here relevance to make it systematic and adequacy of the support. Should I use like, I don't know, maybe I should use numbers. I will email you, or rather upload on my Guru these slides later on by the end of the week. So there are 5 factors or criteria. Okay, relevance and adequacy, objectivity, validity, credibility, completeness. And so here, these are again 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Assess the evidence. How do you do that? By deciding if the author's support is relevant and adequate. This is number 1. Objective, number 2. Valid, number 3. Credible, number 4. Complete, number 5. As for these 2 here, they can be lumped, together with number 10 can be subsumed under number 9. Maybe I can use brackets. And number 10 actually is part of credibility. We'll talk about this in a short while. I'm just simplifying the points because I want to make it easier for you to remember. So these should be 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes. Are you following, guys?
Yes.
Yes, Doctor.
Thank you. Okay. So this is as I said, what we're going to do. This slide summarizes everything. So let's move on now to the specifics where we describe each one of these 5 factors that will make up what we have described as a framework for argument analysis. So I'll leave this slide now, save. Okay. Are you all there? Would you like a 5-minute break or no need? Personally, I don't need a break, but would you like a 5-minute break? Yes or no?
I'm fine with it.
Class, does anyone want to make a trip to the toilet?
Yes, Doctor.
Okay, so a 5-minute break. Now it's 11, so we'll be back at 11:05, 6. Because now I want you to be, we're going to be more practical. So, okay, go. We'll be back shortly.
Thank you, Doctor.
You're welcome. I'll play some music.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد يا مسلمين صلوا عليه اللهم صل على محمد وصحب محمد يا مؤمنين صلوا عليه لطيف خبير سميع بصير جليل رقيب مجيب غفور شكور ودود قيوم رؤوف صبور مجيد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد يا مسلمين صلوا عليه اللهم صل على محمد وصحب محمد يا مؤمنين صلوا عليه الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس الله أكبر الله أكبر يا رحمن ارحم ضعفنا أجب دعانا الله أكبر يا لطيف ألطف بنا يا لطيف ألطف بنا يا لطيف ألطف بنا ألطف بنا
All right, class. Welcome back.
Hello, doctor.
So, what's the first of these factors? The first of the 5 factors, who can recall? Deciding if the author's support is relevant and adequate. So, relevance and adequacy. First one is relevance and adequacy. Can you please go to the textbook? Look at page, well, just open page 160. We're going to watch now a video or a couple of videos about relevance and adequacy.
Hi there. When we talk, write, or tell a story, we want to communicate something. Sometimes the information is pretty straightforward, as in 1 + 1 = 2, but a lot of times what we share is not so straightforward, so we may need to argue the point. But when someone presents an argument, you don't simply accept it. Or do you? Shouldn't you analyze it to see if it's a sound argument? Stick around and let's talk about analyzing the argument. Hi, welcome to Snap Language. I'm Mark Franco. An argument, or a logical argument, is a set of ideas put together to support a point. For example, this is a very simple argument. You like Japanese food, so you'll love the sushi restaurant. The claim is that because you like this, you'll also like that. But is it a good argument? If you understand really well what an argument is, you can then build strong arguments that support your ideas when you speak or write. And of course, when you listen to or read someone's arguments, you can also make sure that the arguments are well built or convincing. To build an argument, you need statements or claims. One of these claims is a conclusion. The other claims are premises. They provide evidence to support your conclusion. Let's look at a very simple example. Hawaii has hot weather year-round and beautiful beaches, so it is the best place for a vacation. There are 3 claims in this argument. The main point, or the conclusion, is that Hawaii is the best place for a vacation. 2 premises support this claim. 1, Hawaii has hot weather year-round, and 2, Hawaii has beautiful beaches. Let's see how well this argument works. What supports the point that Hawaii is the best place for a vacation? One of the premises used as evidence is that it's hot there year-round. Well, if you like hot weather, yes, but what if you don't? And what if you'd rather go skiing? The other premise is that Hawaii has beautiful beaches. How do you define beautiful? Why beaches in Hawaii? Aren't there other places in the world with beautiful beaches? What if you prefer the mountains or the city? We're not trying to prove or disprove that Hawaii is a great place for a vacation. We're simply analyzing the argument in this example. Even if you agree that Hawaii is a great vacation spot, you may decide that this argument doesn't make a good case for Hawaii. Let's look at another example. See if you can identify the claims and which is presented as the conclusion and which are the premises that support that conclusion. Cell phones pose serious risks to their users. Several studies have shown a correlation between cell phone use and the development of brain tumors, Hardell. The International Agency for Research on Cancer, IARC, classifies cell phones as a possible cause of cancer. Pause the video now if you need time to identify the claims. Premise 1 is here. Premise 2 is here. The main point, or the conclusion, is here. But wait, before you swear never to use a cell phone again, let's analyze the argument. Look at the premises again and ask questions. Are there problems with these premises? Is there sufficient evidence to support the conclusion? Researchers have found a correlation between cell phone use and the development of brain tumors. How good were these studies? A correlation does not mean that cell phones were the cause. Are there studies maybe that found no correlation? The second premise is that they classified cell phones as a possible cause of cancer. A possible cause of cancer means the evidence is not definitive. Did they make that classification based on the same studies mentioned in premise 1? If so, this premise is a bit redundant. Again, right or wrong, we're just analyzing the argument. As a critical thinker, you must challenge your assumptions and other people's assumptions. Just because something is in writing doesn't mean it's a fact or the truth. Even if a conclusion is based on facts, it doesn't mean it's a good conclusion. You may want to take another look at our video about distinguishing fact from opinion for more information on this. Snap Language has videos about reading, writing, and other topics. Knowing how to use the language well helps you think critically. Therefore, you should subscribe to this channel so you can get smarter through language. Well, this argument is totally true. Totally. Well, I'll see you in part 2. For now, thanks for stopping by and watching this video. I'm serious though, Snap Language rocks. Bye.
Snap Language rocks. Totally true. He made an argument towards the end of the video, trying to persuade you to subscribe to his channel. So he made an argument and then reflected. I mean, it was meant. So whether you believe in his argument or... So he wants you to believe in his argument, to buy into his argument. But personally, because you can see that I'm using his educational videos, so he's a great linguist and language instructor. Before actually venturing into YouTube, the business of YouTube making, he was a linguist, and he'd been a linguist and a teacher for a long time. When he decided to make videos, educational videos. So he's a PhD holder, Dr. Mark Franco. So I believe his argument because I have been using his videos in my classes. I trust them. Again, I'm not making an argument for him. I'm not asking you to subscribe or this is another issue. Where are we? Let's watch another video, by the way, by Dr. Mark Franco, largely about the first factor, which is relevance and adequacy, and to some extent also credibility and validity and credibility.
The previous video was about understanding how an argument is built so we can read it critically and see if the argument is logical. Make sure you watch that video first. Now, one way to analyze the argument is to look closely at the evidence the writer presents and ask if it is relevant and sufficient. So stick around and let's talk about evaluating the evidence. Hi, welcome to Snap Language, Mark Franco here. So, to build an argument, we present a series of claims that lead to a conclusion. Of course, the premises in the argument must support the conclusion in a way that makes sense. Of course. You'd be surprised though, even an argument that appears to make sense may not be really strong. It may not even be a valid argument. Let's look at a fairly obvious example first. X-Town is a great place to live. It has many parks and recreation areas where you can relax and exercise. Its parks have vast green areas including trees and wildflowers. The X-Town Public Library was founded in 1841, making it one of the oldest libraries in the area. In this simple paragraph, the topic is X-Town. The point the author wants to make is that X-Town is a great place to live. The author presented 3 premises to support this conclusion. Now, looking at each premise closely, the first is that X-Town has many parks and recreation areas. That's actually good evidence. Most people would agree that this makes any town a good place to live. The next premise is that the parks are green and beautiful. Well, that's more information about the parks, though. What else is there? The final premise is that X-Town has an old library. Oh, that's great, but the conclusion is that it's a great place to live. Having an old library is interesting, but it's not quite relevant to that conclusion. That's not very closely related to the claim. It doesn't provide adequate support. So pretty parks is good evidence. An old library, not so much. Is that all? Typically, when you think of a good place to live, you think of safety, good jobs and schools, shops and restaurants, good transportation, and so forth. The author here said nice things about X-Town, but one relevant piece of evidence isn't quite enough to support a conclusion.
And so it's not, even if the quality of a claim is fine, it is not enough if it is not sufficient. So it is the quantity and the quality, or the quality and the quantity, both relevance and adequacy. A claim has to be one reason, citing one reason or two premises for a big issue is not enough. So you've got to make sure that the premises the author is using, the points he is using to support his conclusion, are also sufficient as you assess the soundness and the strength of an argument.
X-Town is a very safe place to live. Take a quick stroll around town and you will likely run into friendly and helpful people. The author here said nice things about X-Town, quite enough to support a conclusion. X-Town is a very safe place to live. Take a quick stroll around town and you will likely run into friendly and helpful people. A study showed a 60% decrease in robberies and burglaries in recent years. No violent crimes were reported last year. What's the point or the conclusion here? Does the author present sufficient evidence to support that conclusion? Is the evidence relevant to the conclusion? Pause the video and see if you can answer these questions.
Before we go on, as we're asked to pause the video, please take a look at this argument and begin analyzing it. See if it's, at least in terms of the sufficiency or adequacy and relevance factor, see if the points are, the supporting details are sufficient and relevant. First of all, define what's the issue, the topic. The topic is X-Town. Is the main sentence, or the main idea sentence is X-Town is a very safe place to live. So the author is going to tell you about how X-Town, or why is X-Town a very safe place to live. So this is the main idea, obviously. The other sentences are the supporting details, the supporting sentences, whether major and minor or only major. The issue is, the topic is descriptive, not prescriptive. It's going to tell you to describe. Okay, what are the reasons the author is using to support his stance? Summarize the premises, the reasons. What are they? Take a quick stroll around town and you will likely run into friendly and helpful people. So this is premise number one. A study showed a 60% decrease in robberies and burglaries in recent years. This is major supporting detail number two. No violent crimes were reported last year. Robberies, burglaries. Okay, if we don't want to think of the last one as a minor detail, further explaining the second supporting sentence, we may think of it as a third supporting detail. if we, differentiate between robberies and burglaries and crimes. Okay, looks like a third actually supporting point. So we have 3 supporting details or 3 premises supporting the claim or the conclusion that X-Town is a very safe place to live. Fine. This is still literal. Now we want to read it critically. Let's look at them one by one and see. But I would like you to do that. Do you think that the premises are sufficient and strong enough? Do you think the author is making a good case, has successfully managed to support his position that X-Town is a very safe place to live? Has he provided enough and sufficient support, relevant support to this point or conclusion? Take a quick stroll around town and you'll likely run into friendly and helpful people. Okay, this looks okay. Friendly, helpful people. Ties in with being a safe place to live. Okay, what about the second premise? A study showed a 60% decrease in robberies and burglaries in recent years. What do you think of this premise? Is it relevant? Good enough? A study showed a 60% decrease. Well, a 60% of what number? Of 100 or 1,000 or more? A study showed a 60% because if this 60% is of a very large number, 1,000 or 2, then this decrease is not that good. Because if it's, as I said, a decrease in 1,000 or 2,000, then there are still many robberies and burglaries. A study showed a 60%. No violent crimes were reported last year. What about earlier years? No violent crimes reported. Okay, this is last year, but what about other years? Maybe there was something special about this year.
Did you pause the video? The main point here is that X-Town is a safe place to live. Starting from the bottom here, no one reported any violent crimes last year. Yes, that's relevant to being a safe place. But what about previous years? Maybe last year was different somehow? The writer also mentioned no violent crimes. How about other types of crimes? But overall, no violent crime could mean it's a safe place, so let's say it's okay evidence for now. Besides, we must consider all the evidence, so let's continue. There was a 60% reduction in crimes. That sounds good. Well, that's 60% of what number? If there were, say, 1,000 crimes before, 60% fewer than 1,000 is still a lot of crimes. A writer often includes a study and statistics or data because they provide strong support to a claim, and readers tend to believe this type of information. As critical readers, we know sometimes it only sounds good. We still need to ask questions to see if any piece of information truly supports the main point, regardless where the information comes from. Finally, you'll run into a lot of friendly, helpful people in X-Town. The point is that it's a safe place, not how nice the people are. As you can see, even when it appears there's good information to support a conclusion, you should always evaluate the evidence. Did the author present sufficient information? Is all the information good and relevant to the conclusion? In this paragraph, not so much.
Notice that I have said in my own analysis.
It's not how nice.
Notice that I said about the first premise, reason cited by the author to support his position that X town is a very safe place, I said it was okay. But upon further critical examination, it was found to be actually irrelevant. We're talking about safe. The main point, the main point is that this city is a safe place. Is being friendly and being helpful, has this to do with safety? What's the relation between being safe and being friendly and helpful? Can you see? The connection is weak. So if you just at surface level look, you will miss this, deeper connection or realization that safety and being helpful and being friendly are not very much related. The place is safe. Why? Because people are friendly. People are, what's the other adjective used? I keep forgetting it. Helpful. Well, a place could be helpful, safe, without being helpful, or the other way around.
People are. As you can see, even when it appears there's good information to support a conclusion, you should always evaluate the evidence. Did the author present sufficient information? Is all the information good and relevant to the conclusion? In this paragraph, not so much. I'm not saying you should never believe anything you read. If we trust the source, it's very likely the writer will do their best to support their claims and provide sufficient and relevant information. But we don't want to learn something that's not very accurate, right? We don't want people to persuade us to believe something unless they give us very good reasons to do so. So we should always read critically, always make sure conclusions are logical and accurate and supported by sufficient and relevant information. Is that all? Yes, pretty much. So next time you read something, look closely. I often put extra information in the description box below a video, so take a look. There are more things you can do to read critically, but that's all for this video. What do you do to read critically? Maybe you do something I didn't mention here, so put it in the comments. For now, click that like button and subscribe to Snap Language on YouTube. And read critically. Use those critical eyes. Yeah. Bye.
So that's it. To make sure, the purpose of this class is to make sure that the conclusion is logical, accurate, and has enough support. Logical, accurate, and has enough support. Okay, so the first factor, relevance and adequacy. Let's move now to the objectivity. Decide if the author's support is objective. Objective. The hallmarks of objectivity are facts and evidence. And so, to decide if an argument, if the supporting details are objective or not, see if the author is including facts and evidence in any form. Statistics, research findings, historical data, the legal documents, any of the, I think about 9 types of support that we came across in maybe chapter 4, supporting details, some of which are mentioned on page 161 now. So the inclusion of such, types of support can make the argument objective. So see if the author has these types of support, including facts, statistics, expert testimony, expert opinion, or merely relying on personal opinions, assumptions, and personal, views. And it is not enough, or the argument will not be good if the author is relying only on one types of, evidence. And so see if the author relies only on one type, for example, expert testimony, or only statistics, giving you numbers, percentages, ratios, or if the author using a combination or a mixture of, evidence types, like an expert testimony, a historical data, a legal document, a government report. So the more, there is variety in these supporting types, the stronger the argument. The stronger the argument. So this is part of your assessment of the quality in addition to the quantity of the argument. So back to objectivity. Facts, evidence in any of these forms, can make the argument objective. Look at the examples on page 161. Fatihatul, can you read example 1? Expert testimony, Dr. Glenn Williams.
Dr. Glenn Williams, a psychologist from Nottinghamshire University School of Social Sciences, states that a positive relationship is the key to happiness.
Glenn Williams states that the positive relationship is the key to happiness. Glenn Williams. The question is, who is Glenn Williams? An cinema maker? My father's friend? Who is Glenn Williams? What are his qualifications? Who is he?
A psychologist.
He is a PhD holder, Dr. Glenn Williams, a psychologist from Nottingham Trent University School of Social Sciences. So this guy is an expert then. He's not an cinema maker. An expert. And so this can be used. Remember that expert testimony is one of the types of support that can be used. Move on. Anissa, read 2.
Studies carried out by the University of Minnesota and University of Chicago have shown that gratitude is the perfect antidote to deal with any kind of stress.
Gratitude is the perfect antidote to deal with any kind of stress. If you want to be happy, be grateful. Be grateful. Subhanallah, in Islam, this is central. It's clear in the Quran that the gratitude, even there would be no reason for God to punish us if we show gratitude and believe in Him. So I am not surprised about this. But getting back to our point, gratitude is the perfect antidote to deal with any kind of stress. Who is saying this? Studies carried out by the University of Minnesota and University of Chicago. So this is a research finding. And so the argument is objective. Argument 3, statistics. 50 million pills were consumed by, so a statistic, a type of objective support. Argument 4, I am a living example of happiness. Nothing brings me down. Oh, good for you. Good for you. So this is a personal opinion. this is a subjective opinion or support. So I am a living example of happiness. Nothing brings me down. So this is not scientific. This is not objective. So objectivity then. See if the author is using types of objective support, quality, and also assess the quantity. Only one type or a variety. One type, okay, objective, but not as strong as an argument that makes use of a variety or a mixture of types of support. And so I would like you I would like to tell you that whenever you read from now onwards an argument and you want to understand it, know what the issue is, the point the author is making is, and the reasons used to support this point are understanding, and then moving into evaluating using these 5 factors. And since we have 5 factors, I would like you to give 5 marks for each factor. So the total will be 25. As you analyze, as you evaluate objectivity, if everything good about objectivity, 5 out of 5. You don't feel that it's 5 out of 5, allocate a mark. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Relevance and adequacy, again, assign a mark, 1 out of 5 or 0 out of 5. So you can actually write this down as you converse, with the text. And at the end, you will come up with a total out of 25. So depending on the total, you can see the value, the soundness of a text. A text that has 20 out of 25 is then a good argument. 5 or 10 out of 25 is a weak argument, so you shouldn't buy into or believe in. So from now onwards, begin practicing this. Give a mark. 5 for objectivity, 5 for relevance and adequacy, 5 for credibility, 5 for validity, and 5 for completeness. Okay? If I teach you reading for specific purposes in semester 5, we're going to get back to this topic again. Actually, we're going to start our semester with this topic because every week I want a group of students to present to tell us about or to show us the analysis of an argument weekly. To read an article and to present it critically to us and to show us the mark that you have assigned. Okay, move on to validity. So the third factor is to decide if the author's support is valid. Validity of the argument. Valid arguments, the argument is logical and well reasoned. It is not fallacious. And so the hallmarks or characteristics, this is the word hallmark in case you're not familiar with it, hallmark. It means characteristic. The hallmarks or the characteristics of a valid argument are logic and well reasoning. Okay, let's talk a bit more about this. You can look at the book. The pitfall here, the problem here, pitfall, is that some writers, some authors, some people might use a fallacy or might resort to fallacies to support their arguments because they don't have real solid reasons, so they resort to fallacies. What is a fallacy? A fallacy is a false way of thinking about something. A false way of thinking about something. And so it is an error in reasoning. Now, fallacies weaken arguments, but they can be persuasive and sometimes hard to evaluate for a casual reader. They might not be easy to detect for the casual reader. There are many types of fallacies. You can look for fallacies on the internet. We're going to show you some examples of fallacies, only some, because we have constraints and restrictions now, time constraints and even the nature of the course. One of these fallacies is what is known as the fallacy of appeal to people. I am writing it here, appeal to people. What is this fallacy? I'll give you an example. There are ones in the book, but I'll give you my own. A writer, an author, a politician who does not have a real reason might resort to this fallacy known as appealing to people. For example, okay, this boy goes to his dad and says, "Dad, yes, my child, the child is hesitant. I would like you, Dad, to buy me an iPhone." An iPhone. But why would you need a mobile phone when I have bought you a mobile phone? The Samsung. I know that you bought me a Samsung, a Galaxy a month ago, but I am talking about iPhone, Daddy, not a Samsung. Excuse me? And why would you want an iPhone? Now, the argument. Why would you want an iPhone? Now let's hear to the premise or premises or reasons the boy is going to use to support his conclusion that he wants an iPhone. Well, because all my classmates have an iPhone. All my classmates have an iPhone. So because all your classmates have an iPhone, you want an iPhone? What about if your classmates are fools? What about if they are idiots? What about if their parents are rich? I mean, the fact that all your classmates having an iPhone is not a good reason why I should buy you an iPhone. There is an error in reasoning here, a false way of thinking about something. The fact that all your classmates have an iPhone is not a reason why specifically I should buy you an iPhone. So on the surface of it, it looks like a good reason. All my classmates, because all people do it, appealing to people. Well, all people do that. Trying, as I said, to make a case or a point because all people, all appealing to people. This is a fallacy. Imagine if the boy who was making an argument, Imagine if he said this as a reason or a premise. Maybe he took a course with Dr. Aladdin about critical reading, argumentation. At that, I really need an iPhone. Why? Okay, because the iPhone, according to a study made by blah blah blah, the iPhone has been proven to be the best phone or the phone number one in terms of security. And you know that this is an issue given the blah blah blah. In addition, premise 2, the operating system of iPhone again has been testified according to blah 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 to be the best operating system. And so, though it's more expensive, but an iPhone can last longer. So you don't have to buy another phone in a year time or 3 times, because the operating system is, imagine if the boy argued his point using this kind of support, rather than resorting to the fallacy, well, because all my classmates have an iPhone. Can you see? Can or cannot? So an argument that uses logical reasons, and where the reasons are well reasoned, that's a valid argument. An argument that depends on fallacies, such as appeal to people, appeal to authority, because, important people, celebrities, politicians do that, appealing to authority. Even Dr. Mahathir does that. Even Dr. Aladdin does that, appealing to authority. That's another fallacy. Appeal to authority. Or appeal to ancient wisdom. Ancient wisdom. Or, using circular reasoning. Circular reasoning. What is circular reasoning? Circular reasoning, you do not really give a reason. For example, Dr. Aladdin is a great teacher. That's the conclusion. A great teacher. Why? Because he is so wonderful at teaching. Dr. Aladdin is a good teacher because he is so wonderful at teaching. Now, the reason he is so wonderful at teaching does not add anything in you, does not support, because it is really the same as he is a good teacher. You haven't told me why he is good at teaching. He is a good teacher. So this is known as circular reasoning fallacy. Circular, like a circle. He is a wonderful teacher because he is good at teaching. No real reason. So it might look like a reason. He is a good teacher because he is so wonderful at teaching. For the casual reader, it looks like a reason. But it is a fallacy. And so there are, as I said, a number of fallacies. You can, if you're interested, you can look for them on the internet. Write the word fallacies and look for more fallacies and examples. These pitfalls in thinking or errors in thinking, and try to avoid or When writing, avoid them, and when reading, be watchful of them. Look at fallacy 1 in the book, which is another example of appealing to people. You watch CNN daily. You should watch CNN daily. Why? Because it is the most preferred television network this year. Well, that the CNN is the most preferred television network this year is not a reason why I should watch it. I don't see the connection, the well reasoning or logic. So the error in reasoning is that this idea must be true because it is widely believed to be so. So the fact that many people watch CNN is not a reason or a good reason why I should watch it. Appealing to people. If you tell me that the CNN has been proven to give accurate information by this study or that, well, this looks like now a reason. But telling me that many people prefer the CNN is not a reason why I should watch the CNN or why the CNN is good. Is a good agency, news agency. I mean, probably in many cases, the majority would mean that all the fools are on one side. All the fools are on one side. Okay, move on to credibility. The fourth parameter or factor is credibility. Credibility. Decide if the author's support is credible. There are two things to investigate: author and references. There are two things to consider when deciding if the author's support is credible. And these are the author's qualifications, the author himself, and the references used by the author. So, two things to help you decide on the credibility of the argument. By credible, we mean that the argument is convincing and believable. Ethos. By the way, very quickly, when it comes to persuasion, a person may use logos. I will write these words in the chat column since they are new to you. Logos, ethos, and pathos. These are the Greek words. And anyhow, we've discussed in a class, one of the classes, that Greek is one of the three main sources of English vocabulary, along with Germanic and later Latin. Logos, these are tools of persuasion, ways to convince people, to make people believe something. A speaker or a writer may use logos. Logos simply means the use of facts, the use of evidence. Logos in Greek means word or reason. Reason, the ability to think and reason out things. Logos is the power of reason. So a writer or a speaker who uses logos in their argument makes use of facts, and objective evidence. Ethos is when the author or the writer or the speaker tries to convince people of the validity or the soundness of an argument by making himself or herself seem credible, seem trustworthy, reliable, etc., etc. So ethos is when the author tries to promote himself or herself as being reliable, trustworthy. That's ethos. Pathos is a way to convince people by trying to connect or arouse their emotions, to stir a certain kind of emotion in them: fear, love, hatred, etc., etc. Ethos is by presenting yourself as an expert, the right person for the job, as someone who knows a lot, so you should believe me. That's ethos. And so a good argument would use a combination of these methods or tools of persuasion. Coming back to credibility, so a credible argument is an argument that is believable, that is convincing. How do you make an argument convincing or believable, credible in other words? By two things. You check the credibility by looking at the author, by investigating the author. Who is the author? Is the author an expert in the field, a qualified person, or a nasi lemak maker? Well, it depends. If the argument is about nasi lemak maker, then the nasi lemak maker will be trustworthy, will be reliable. But I mean, if the argument is about whether abortion should be criminalized or legalized, maybe the nasi lemak maker will not be the right person to address this issue. Despite my respect to all nasi lemak makers. So you look at the qualifications, the credentials of the author. Who is he? If this is a medical issue, then is the person a medical doctor, practitioner, or my grandfather and my grandmother? So you look at the author. If this is a legal issue, then is the author a lawyer, someone trained in the law profession, or a businessman? So you need to look at the author. This will help you decide if the argument credible, convincing, believable or not, and the degree of credibility. I once gave you the example of Dr. Mahathir talking about the economy of Malaysia. When it comes to credibility, certainly the argument then will be credible because Dr. Mahathir is versed in Malaysian economy. But if Dr. Aladdin talks about Malaysian economy, credibility will not be, because what do I know about Malaysian economy? Maybe if Dr. Aladdin is talks about linguistics, language, then he will be credible. The other thing to look for when assessing credibility is the references. The references the author, the speaker, the writer is using, in terms of the quantity and the quality. What references does the author use? Does he all the time cite his grandmother, or does he use credible sources like according to Dr. John, according to Professor blah blah blah, according to the latest government report, according to a study in or at this institution. So look at the references. Look at the people he uses to support his argument. And the number. Only does the author rely only on one reference all the time? One source? Or a number of sources? One source is not good. Relying heavily on one or two sources, references, is not a good indicator that the argument is credible. So this is credibility. The author's credentials or qualifications, who is he, and the references he uses. The quality of them, weak, strong, and the number, the variety. The last factor to consider is completeness. What is completeness, which Dharamandra talked about? Every argument, guys, has a counter argument. When we talk about the prescriptive issue, whether something should be done or should not be done, then you have two views, people who agree or disagree. Again, the example I've given you, whether, for example, abortion should be made legal or illegal, should be made a crime or a right. Certainly you will find people who agree or disagree, people who will adopt this view and people who will adopt the other view. And so, by completeness, a complete argument is an argument that mentions the other view, the counter argument, the opposing point of view. This does not mean that you're going to address the other point of view and bring all their support for that. No, because you have your own point of view, which is opposing to them. But by acknowledging, by leaving a small space, a sentence or two, for the other view, this will add power to your argument. How? It will add power in the sense that it will show the reader that you are first of all aware of the opposing view. Hey guys, I know that there are people who say that blah blah blah, but despite that, and here comes your refutation or rebuttal, your argument. But despite that, you are saying that, for example, that I still believe that things should be done this way or that way, and here are the reasons, your rebuttal, your refutation. So mentioning the other point of view makes the reader think that you are, as I said, aware of the alternative view, and you are even addressing it. You are telling me that I know that there are people who, but despite that, I still see that my argument is more valuable, and this is because of the reasons I am citing, or I am going to cite, or I have cited and developed. So an argument that acknowledges the opposing view is then a complete argument, and so a stronger argument than an argument that ignores the other view. So you make an argument complete by providing enough substantiation, enough evidence, and that by mentioning, as I said, leaving a few space for the other, or the opposing view or perspective. This way, the argument will be complete. So when analyzing argument, when evaluating or assessing evidence, see if the author has acknowledged the opposing view or not, and decide on a mark, 1 out of 5. Okay? That's it, guys. I think I have done a good job I wish that you would, capitalize on this knowledge, keep it at the back of your mind from now onwards, and whenever you read something, assess the evidence after you identify the issue, recognize the point the author is making, and summarizing the premises. Then you assess the evidence in terms of these 5 factors: relevance and adequacy, objectivity, validity, reliability, and completeness. Whenever you come across a paragraph, an essay, an article, an argument, draw upon this knowledge. And the more you are conscious of this knowledge and the more you draw upon it, the more critical reader you will become, the more a critical thinker you will become. Please at home, after you look at the chapter again and the slides by the end of this weekend again, look at sections 8.6 at home on your own, and after you look at section 8.6, then please work on test 1 at the end of the chapter, at the end of the book. Test 1. It's important that you put this into practice. So let test 1 be the first step or the first exercise in consolidating these concepts and this framework for argument analysis. Let it be the first exercise, and from now onwards, as I said, apply this framework, build on this knowledge or capitalize on this knowledge. I hope you've enjoyed the class. Any questions? If no questions,
No, doctor.
then we can end the class now. We shall meet. Before that, please remember that the test 2 is going to be at the end of this weekend, Saturday. We're going to have test 2, a 1-hour test beginning at 9. Test 2, some passages that will test your literal comprehension, inferential comprehension. I am not sure if I'm going to include critical comprehension because I haven't written the test yet. Okay? So we'll meet on Saturday for 1 hour, 10 minutes maybe, for test 2. And next week we're going to talk about cohesion and coherence, week 13. All right. Best of luck. See you.
All right, doctor.
Thank you, doctor.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you, doctor.
Thank you, doctor.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you, doctor.
Sarvin Pia.
السلام عليكم. يسلموا بلال، كيفك؟ عساك بخير. الساعة 6:15 عندكم الآن. ربما تكون صليت ونمت، لست أدري. إيش أخباركم زمان؟ كيف القطعة الجديدة؟ تروح عليها؟ تشوي هناك؟ يعني أنتوا طمعتونا بالموضوع هذا يا عمي، بس العين بصيرة والإيد قصيرة زي ما بيقولوا. إحنا وين 40,000 دولار حق قطعة أرض؟ لكن نقول يا رب. حابب أتكلم معكم، حابب أتكلم أيضا مع أمي لأنه ما تكلمتش معاها دي مدة، فكون تبقى تنسق لنا كده وقت يعني يكون ملائم لكم ولنا بحيث نتكلم معاكم ومع الوالدين. جزاك الله خيرا. أنا بعت حقيقة الرسالة هذه بالأمس لمحمد على أساس إنه هو عنده مستقل، فقلت يعني لست أدري إذا كان عندك وسيلة مواصلات ولا لا، بس محمد أنا بعرف عنده مستقل، لكن يبدو إنه محمد اتضح إنه الرسالة مش واصلة، لست أدري، يبدو موبايله ما أعرفش إيش المشكلة. فلما انتبهت الأمر هذا في نهاية اليوم بعت الرسالة هذه إلك، يعني هو المبلغ واصل من امبارح صباحا، بعت الرسالة هذه إلك على أساس تطلب منه الذهاب. طبعا لابد محمد اللي يروح لأن استخدمت بطاقة هويته. وكما ذكرت يعني $100 للوالد والمئة الأخرى تصرف، و200 شيكل للوالدة والباقي لسماح. آه، آم، ويعني جزاكم الله خيرا. وإن شاء الله قريبا يعني كما ذكرت بيتنسق لنا اتصال كده بحيث نقدر نحكي مع الوالدين ونشوف أخباركم وأخبارهم. مع ألف سلامة. أنا في مكتبي الآن دوبي مخلص محاضرة الساعة 12:15، ضايل الظهر ساعة إلا ربع، على الساعة 1 يعني كمان ساعة إلا ربع حتوجه للبيت أتغدى وأصلي وأرجع تاني عندي محاضرة مسائية على الساعة 2:30 3 ساعات. فنراكم إن شاء الله على خير.